Is this anything? I am in a lot of trouble. Okay. Yeah. I said 20 paintings? For next year's Art Basel? I'm working on it, I told you hyper-realism? Oh my god. Listen, dude, I think that tea that we were drinking was peyote. I'm going for more like a de Kooning vibe. Put him on the phone. Hey, Mr. Gagosian, hi. So the money you gave me is gone. But I am working on 20 paintings that are gonna blow your socks off. I don't know why people keep using that word, hyper-realism. What does that even mean? What is real? You know what? This is real. Trust me. Okay, I love you too. Bye. Contemporary art could be a tough racket to break into. Sometimes it feels like unless Kanye is paying you to make his album art, there's no way to get a foothold. But as of recent, fashion has kind of acted as a gateway that introduces the unwashed masses to the world of fine art. Probably one of the first really notable collaborations between designer and artist, I think, would probably be Marc Jacobs' collaboration with Steven Sprouse when he was the creative director of Louis Vuitton. After that, the spigot was spugged. But what makes a contemporary artist viable for fashion? What about their style or persona or whatever it is makes them desirable by designers to collaborate with? Today I'm talking about
Arsham.
Fashion can't get enough of this guy. They love him. You can see his work anywhere from Kith to Dior multiple times, and as of recently, he collaborated with Uniqlo times Pokemon times Arsham. A three-way collab. What about his style, his artwork, his creations makes him so viable or desirable by fashion brands? So, as always, here's the 3 rules about art. Number 1, if you like the video, you can like it. Helps with the algorithm, and more people can see it. So, number 2, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. We got new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. And third rule of art is, if you guys love this content, if you love watching me do these videos, if you love hanging out with me, please consider donating to the Patreon. If you're able to support me on the Patreon, I could very realistically continue making these videos, and it's deeply appreciated. So let's get into the action. To briefly go over who Arsham is, he's a contemporary artist living and working in New York, and his work primarily revolves around sculptural or like physical installations that are almost always very textural in nature, kind of corrupted or broken down, and typically very monochromatic. And his works can be everything from giant, huge installations to sculptures to smaller pieces that you can literally buy at Kith. Arsham studied at Cooper Union in New York as a college student. He initially wanted to study architecture, but didn't get into the program. We can begin by asking the question, what is art?
We know what art is. It's paintings of horses!
More or less, what is the purpose of art? Art isn't necessarily meant to be aesthetically pleasing. Think of Francis Bacon or Cindy Sherman. Artists often create works that are grotesque, ghoulish, frightening. Whether you love or hate Takashi Murakami, something that I really respect about his work is his idea of superflat. Murakami's works are very aesthetically pleasing. In their bright colors, in their glossiness, they aim to be as perfectly pleasing to the eye as possible. In a similar way, Arsham's work is very aesthetically pleasing. Some people might think that his work is shallow in some ways, but I think it could be argued that one of the reasons that he's so appealing, especially to designers, is that his work is aesthetically pleasing. It's monochromatic, often very matte and textural. There's something that is gratifying about the way it looks. Whether or not being just visually gratifying is enough to make you a good artist is up for debate, honestly. But he has the kind of work that, at least considering kind of what my tastes and sentimentalities, these are types of works that I would be happy to put into my house, compared to a piece of work that would be aesthetically challenging or mentally challenging in some way. You know, it's often not as easy to put that kind of aesthetic into fashion, which for the most part aims to be visually desirable. There are exceptions, of course, but I would want to point out that being aesthetically pleasing is one of the reasons his work has worked so well. His work has worked so well in collaboration. Arsham is well known among both designers and celebrities. He describes in the New York Times his encounter of meeting Pharrell for the first time at a dinner in Miami. And one of Arsham's actually breakout opportunities came in around 2006.
I worked on a project, must have been like around 2005. Actually, it was for Dior. And it was when Hedi Slimane was at Dior. And he did this thing where he asked artists to create works for the fitting rooms. So I proposed the design, and he loved it, and the team loved it.
And that was actually like one of Arsham's like real breakthrough moments, and it came through the world of fashion. It's clear to me that Arsham's really good at marketing himself and getting himself in the right rooms with the right people. I said this in the past, but realistically, for a lot of artists, their success often rides on their ability to network, to be in the zeitgeist, to be social. In a Hypebeast interview near the end, when asked about what advice he would give to young artists, he says that you need to make your own opportunities. You need to find a way to get your work in front of people rather than waiting for gallerists or collectors to see your work in the wild. The obvious reason that Arsham thinks that is like one of the best tips to give to young artists is because that's something he does very well. I'm sure, like, critics would argue that that quality alone is the only reason we're talking about him right now, and not the value of his art itself. Whether or not your work is brilliant won't matter if you can't get people to co-sign it. Arsham's art is reflective of the modern world. I think this is an important detail because fashion, in a lot of ways, is reflective of our lives, and it's possibly one of the most reflective mediums that exists. You can tell a lot about a culture based on what they wore. Right now, if you look at our clothes, you could probably tell a lot about who we are as people. So clothing is always a mirror for society. Arsham's work is very much similar. It is often sculptural pieces that are reminiscent of products or clearly a specific brand product that he has reshaped, recreated in this material, and is showing in this kind of deconstructed or destroyed form. Being so pop art, being so relatable and obvious and recognizable is something that kind of can link Arsham to fashion. Fashion is accessible. One of Arsham's gallerists in LA has said about his work, there is no longer any highbrow or lowbrow, and Arsham's work exists in that space where there is no real division. If that sounds familiar at all, it's basically the way that people have been describing the streetwear revolution for the last 10 years. This breakdown of high and low, this incorporation of like high-end stuff and low-end stuff, a la Supreme with Louis Vuitton. And this idea that there is no high, middle, or low brow is, in a lot of ways, that is like a big postmodern concept. The fact that Arsham is kind of in this space where he's kind of he's erased the division between high and low, presumably because a lot of his products or a lot of his sculptures feature things that are very pedestrian and it's very understandable. There's an obvious relationship to where streetwear or high fashion or whatever we're calling it, where it exists today. High fashion is often very expensive hoodies. So that kind of dialogue is natural to be incorporated into the world of fashion because it's the kind of thing that they've already been discussing. Alright, let me try to put a big bow on this entire video. Daniel Arsham has an art style that is aesthetically pleasing and interesting enough where a lot of designers can see the utility of asking him to make things like installations, dressing rooms. The fact that his work is so monochromatic and so blank, it probably contributes to the capacity for multiple fashion designers to utilize him. It's kind of like a blank canvas. I bet there are people watching this video who disagree. They saw his work and thought it was not pretty or good or something they want in their house. And I understand that. Tastes are always different. It doesn't have to be your taste for you to understand that it has kind of this wide and broad appeal. What do I think of Daniel Arsham at the end of this video? When I started doing research, I did like his art. I thought that aesthetically it was really cool. But doing more research, I'm feeling like there's something kind of shallow about it. He says that a lot of his work kind of relates to time and the passage of time. And I can understand, you know, like it's like he's making these artifacts. But I'm not seeing where the depth beyond that. He's just kind of saying that these are old pieces of material and I think about time. That doesn't really say a lot to me in the same way that if we look at persistence of a memory, there is a lot going on in this work and a lot of Salvador Dali's other works kind of inform what we can interpret in this piece. That is really about time. But I think that if we're asking ourselves whether Daniel Arsham is a quote-unquote good artist, I think the value of his art will probably come from the aesthetic features that it presents, from the aesthetic spaces that he creates. I think the message is irrelevant, and he would probably be, in my opinion, he'd be better off just saying there is no message. So you guys, let me know what you think of the video. Let me know what you thought of this kind of, it's still about fashion. I talked about an artist, but it really is about fashion. So let me know in the comments below. As always, feel free to follow me on Instagram. I like to share stories and get involved with you guys on there. I love hearing from you. And if you got it in your heart, please feel free to join the Patreon. Right now's the time to sign up, baby, because right now is the time that I'm looking for Patreon feedback to get an idea of what kind of content or rewards or benefits you guys would really like. But at the end of the day, the Patreon is to help me make this sustainable, make this channel sustainable. So, consider it. And as always, I'll catch you guys later.